Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am very happy to be here with Dr. Tesla. Said that right?
Mm.
Dr. T is what he likes to go by. Clearly, you could see here. And he's over in one of my old childhood vacation spots. Every year, we'd go to Mammoth. I was a Southern California boy, and we go to Mammoth every single year. Look forward to that every year for a couple of weeks. And that's where he is. He's over in Mammoth. So hi, Dr. T.
Hello. Greetings.
Well, it's really nice to see that there is a really talented, holistic, natural alternative. We're going to get into those terms in a little bit. Veterinarian over in Mammoth. And I want to start by let's maybe get into that, those definitions and how you think about the difference between, people use these terms interchangeably: holistic, natural, alternative. Break down that process for me, how you think about those terms and those titles.
Well, I think there's the definition, and then there's what people understand or they comprehend. And so I never really liked the holistic label, although holistic means treating the whole body and treating, the whole situation. And that is what I strive to do. But people often don't understand the differences in these disciplines. So, like, for instance, homeopathic, they'll mix that in with holistic. And homeopathy is a whole discipline unto itself, which I think has great legitimacy. But I like more integrative medicine, because my clients come to me with, certain expectations or what they trust in. And so I'll try to address it in ways that I can get 100% compliance. That's the bottom line. Integrative, I think, is the best, because you can take any of the alternative or conventional modalities and utilize those, somewhat seamlessly, or use them together. Often I'll present a short-term approach and a long-term approach. Let's treat the symptoms initially, get those under control, and then we can mitigate the underlying cause. Let's do that together and not rely on just treating symptoms.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
Well, what do you see in Mammoth? Do you see, like, what type of client comes in? It's got to be different than a city dog and cat.
Well, we see a lot of city dogs because so many people visit here. And so there's the local population. It's become very expensive to live in Mammoth. And so there are demographic changes that have occurred over the last 20 years. But we see the basic stuff, abscesses and, fire engine practice. But what I think, try to excel at are the complicated, undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, wrong, treated wrongly kind of cases. And as we've discussed prior to this, that's where I'm headed in my career, my next career.
Yeah, that's great. So I know you're very interested and intrigued about, working within a pet's digestive issues in their system. So give me some facts. What are some facts about a dog's digestive system?
Well, I think it's useful to challenge conventional dogma about the whole digestive system. Certainly we see common sense or, run-of-the-mill maldigestion cases and so on. But what's not appreciated about digestion generally, regardless of species, is that if you go to veterinary college to this day, they will not teach you really about the processing of what you eat. What I'm getting at is that we're more or less taught, it's kind of a presumption, that every protein is broken down to its constituent amino acids and broken down completely. And if you get into supplementing very long, you realize that you're looking at a much more complicated, complex, integrated system than that.
Yep.
There are things that get past the stomach and into digestion and are absorbed whole. And there are things that do not. And the body is very intelligent. And that's where we get into some differences on how to treat disease, because if you're in conventional medicine, everything's treated with a drug. When you're in more integrative natural medicine, then you realize that you can use natural whole food and other substances to really address disease and get at the core cause. I think that is a revelation to most people.
Hey there, this is Rob Ryan. I just want to say how much we enjoy making this content for you here. And if you are enjoying it, would you like our video down below? And would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? It sure does help us get discovered by more people like you who need information like this. And also down below in our description, the top link is to our trial pack. We hope you'll order one for your dog so your dog can have fermented superfoods that give them nutrition like they can't find anywhere else. Hard to get nutrients that are easily absorbed. Thank you very much. Now back to the show. Dig deeper into that topic. So you mentioned some of the things are absorbed whole. Like, break down a little bit deeper how you think about digestion. And let's focus on dogs. And if you want, we could then go to cats.
Well, the digestion begins in the mouth, in the oral cavity, with the saliva. And so I believe that the system detects those proteins, those polypeptides and fats and so on in the mouth, and it prepares the digestive tree to handle that appropriately. So, and that's critically important when you're treating all kinds of different things. So it really matters what that food and those supplements are. Yeah, that's the intelligence you're referring to, which is immediately assessing and then reacting in the digestive system. Sure. So the digestive system is going to secrete basically an individualized, appropriate set of enzymes, a whole processing system for that, that meal. It's like a digestive pharmacopoeia. It immediately creates a custom blend inside the gut. That's an interesting. That's a really interesting visual. And what happens to digestive systems over time? I mean, we think about it in terms of aged dogs, but I always think of it I always say that aging is not a disease per se, but it's the extended period of time. As we age, we have more life that we've been under. Our dogs have been under kibble, processed diets, etc. So, how do you think about digestion as a dog ages? And in a lot of times they get into a little bit of trouble with their digestion. Well, I think, particularly what we're dealing with today is a lack of understanding of food. For instance, raw food, plant material or meat, flesh, every cell has within it enzymes that are specifically programmed to break down that substrate. And so what does processing do? It damages that intrinsic digestive capacity that is programmed into cells. So our cells and plant cells are programmed for breakdown, for optimized breakdown, actually. And so the more processing is done with food, the less, the less well they're going to be digested when they're consumed, because now it's all up to the digestive tract. If you consume whole foods, then it's going to be so much easier on that digestive tract. It just has to do the basic stuff. But when you have all the processing, let alone all the, preservatives, additives, and other constituents, that's going to make things difficult. And of course, the basis for the immune system is in the GI. And so when you develop immune, hyperimmune, any kind of an immune disorder, of course, that's going to hamper digestion and absorption. And, if you look at histopaths of, cross sections of inflammatory bowel disease, you can see why they can't absorb anything, and you can see why the systems begin to fail and age prematurely and so on and so forth. There's another thing that nobody talks about, and that is, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and I kind of lament where agriculture has gone. Nobody talks about glyphosate specifically. And I believe that is a real key. I believe I'm dealing with that right now in a lot of cases, mitigating that. And in addition to being an antibiotic, glyphosate, there's a couple of things I'd like to get out there. The lining of our intestinal system, or a dog or cat or any other animal, the intestinal lining is like this. You have tight junctions because it's one cell thick, and you don't want foreign proteins being absorbed past that, getting into the bloodstream before digestion is complete. Correct? So
that's correct.
What is one thing that glyphosate does? So you're going to get food being absorbed into the circulatory system that's undigested. Those are foreign proteins, and it's going to incite a hyperimmune reaction. Well, what do we see now? When I was early in practice 30, 40 years ago, if a dog looked like it had food allergies, we would put it on lamb and rice food, and it would be a food that they'd never seen before, right? That's now right. You have ostrich and sweet potato and every other crazy kind of diet, processed, of course. And, dogs still have allergies, and we're not just seeing food allergies develop at 2, 3, 4 years like we used to. Now you're seeing puppies 4, 5, 6 months old. And so the truth of the matter is that no one tests for glyphosate. And I believe that, my theory is that that's behind a lot of this. I also have a theory that I think is bearing out that that's causing canine dilated cardiomyopathy. But I won't bore you with that.
Interesting. Well, we have a magazine. I'm gonna have to send you a copy of it, a physical copy of it, but it's online for free. Dog Microbiome Magazine. The first article, Dr. T, you'd be very happy to know, is by Dr. Zach Bush, and it's about glyphosate. And we have another article by a great PhD about tight junctions and testing and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I think you're onto something big, and I think it's so ubiquitous. We try to sound the alarm. I mean, it's literally in rainwater at this point. It's everywhere, and it's. If your house is perfectly clean, but your neighbor's spraying Roundup, or you live near a golf course and all those chemicals, they get swept up in the wind and blow towards your home. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's real.
It's a real thing.
So, it's really bad. And, everybody wonders, like, they start going, what are you talking about? It's a relatively new thing. Around 1990, 89, 90 is when it really started taking off. And, now it's sprayed not only to keep to keep the weeds out in residential areas, but on farms to keep them producing better, they genetically modify it so they can spray more chemical on the crop, and the plant isn't affected, but the weeds around it are. It's diabolical. And now what they do, and I'm sure you know, they spray it as a desiccant to dry out the crop once they farm it. And it's, it just dries it out real quick, and it helps them. They don't have to let it sit out and dry naturally. So it's partly convenience, laziness, and greed, honestly, that is, we're really pro not only organic, but really biodynamic. We think is a better version of organic. And we also think regenerative is the ultimate way to go.
Now I'm going to have to close that circle since you opened the gate.
Let's do it.
So, the dog food diets that are carb free, the higher protein that replace the carbohydrates with vegetables, legumes, in particular.
Yep.
So the use of glyphosate is much heavier in the legumes like lentils and so on than other crops. And grain-free is what I'm trying to say, grain-free diets. So those grain-free diets are going to be much higher in glyphosate than the other types of regular diets. So what is another thing that glyphosate does? Well, it replaces actually glycine, which is an amino acid. Glycine is 25% of collagen. And if you look at old recordings about how a heart contracts, it's not just an endless pump that it operates on muscle alone. There's a collagen core that it leverages in order to pump that blood all the way through the circulatory forceful cardiac output. Well, what happens if a muscle or a pump needs to pump too hard? It wears out and gets thin and exhausted.
Sure.
And that's the definition of dilated cardiomyopathy, which is epidemic in dogs right now. So I'm pretty certain that caused by glyphosate causing defective collagen.
Wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard that before, and troubling. All right, so let's go into what are some different digestive issues that animals can have, and what do you see a lot of?
Well, I see a ton of inflammatory bowel disease. That's what I see. And I used to, like everyone else, insist on an intestinal biopsy to see, what the cell types are and just look at the severity of the lesions and all that. And then that would lead to putting the pet on immunosuppressant agents, and usually steroids of one kind or another, or Imuran we would use. But this goes back to how I got into natural medicine, actually. Back in the 90s, I had come out of specialty and referral practice at some point, and I had all of these cases that were on immunosuppressive medications. And my clients came to me and they said, isn't there anything else we can do than be using these drugs? And I was annoyed. I didn't like it because they were questioning. And a lot of people should hear this, because when you go to your veterinarian or doctor and you ask that kind of question, it is annoying because you're confronting them. And honestly, that was a really, really good thing, because it confronted me that what I was doing was only treating, kind of keeping the symptoms down. And so
Yeah.
I won't mention a company, but I came across an ad for a supplement, a whole food supplement, to put these dogs on and cats. And I thought, this is fantastic. I can tell them to use this supplement and they will leave me alone. It was that bad. And so I
Yes.
did that.
Yes.
I did that, and they all got better. They all got off their
Wow.
drugs. And okay,
Amazing.
I couldn't go back at that point. So the rest is history. I'm hooked on natural medicine from there on. So we
That's
see a
great.
lot of inflammatory bowel
And
disease. So when I see that, I'll put them on supplementation, and 95% of the time, the symptoms go away.
yeah, that's amazing. And then you were clear to say whole food supplementation. So is that what your preference is, as opposed to, synthetics or,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
we call them biosynthetics. Yeah. Yeah. Foods. Yeah. That's cool. So can you share with us what are some uncommon digestive problems in pets that may be a little bit more rare?
Well, honestly, using one supplement or another usually fixes almost everything. You've got your pancreatic insufficiency or suboptimized pancreatic functions or conditions, and enzyme treatment usually fixes those, although sourcing enzymes anymore is getting a little tricky. But that's what I see. And I think probably the next step beyond that is that a lot of the allergy dogs we're seeing now are actually, the problem is in the GI tract. And so actually I was thrilled to see Dr. Marsden address that within recent weeks. So
Yeah.
I'd say that represents, almost all of what I see. Now, once I get into another realm, that may shift some.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Dr. Morrison's great. Good friend of ours. So, in terms of your practice, you've been doing this, 40 years?
Yep.
Private practice.
40 years in
Yeah.
practice, total.
Great. And so I know that you're at least thinking about getting into phone consults and helping people outside of Mammoth Lakes, California. Why are you making that move? Like, how do you think about veterinary care today, the state of veterinary care?
Oh boy. I'm going to make some waves, I'm afraid.
I'm sure it's probably not been anything we don't believe. Yeah.
I've just seen it all in 40 years. I've pretty much seen it all. And what I've been careful to look out for is when something doesn't work, it may be frustrating, but that's an opportunity to learn. So I treat teeth completely different from 98% of everyone else. I treat ears different than anyone else. I've got all of my little secrets that I'm ready to release on the world, and I'm going to get a lot of blowback. I can guarantee.
Okay, cool. Usually what ends up happening is when you share it, everybody just calls you crazy, and only the smart people take advantage of it and keep the results to themselves usually, and they win, but it's the standard, the keeping the line in conventional medicine, whether it's ears, teeth, or whatever, is just most of them aren't even, you might get a little bit of flack depending on how far out you are. But I think that it's everybody who knows a really great holistic vet and gets really great. I mean, I've shared some of my experiences and some of them are out there. And I have seen with my own eyes, like miracles. And if somebody would have said, if I would have read something and I didn't know the vet, I read how to do that I would be doing this thing, I'd be like, oh, come on. No way. But having known the vet and having faith in the vet, like, sure, and I think relationships are good that way, because if you have a client that is wise enough to put themselves in your hands and their dog in your hands and will actually follow directions and trust, then you're going to have a really great relationship, and the client's going to get a ton of results for their dogs or cats. Yeah.
And that's what we have in our practice. Yeah. Various kinds of cancer. We've learned to mitigate those with herbs. And now I'm, getting a little bit into stem cell activation and things like that. And so that is going to help us leverage supplementation even further. There's always a workaround. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah. Talk to me about stem cells. It's a topic I love. So please tell us what your, theories and philosophy is on stem cells and what you're doing, how you're using them.
Well, this is going to be completely unconventional as well. There's a company called LifeWave, an inventor that came up with, actually he did work for the military, for special services, submariners and those kind of people that needed to be on duty for ungodly periods of time and still have energy.
Yep.
And so he came up with little patches, skin patches, like a nicotine patch, that size, but very different. And it actually, what was interesting is coming off of the poly-MVA situation, these patches actually stimulate mitochondrial copper peptides and enhance energy and improve efficiency utilization and this kind of thing, ATP and NADH. And so anyway, it started with energy patches, but the guys come up with technology that with the stem cell, with a patch, you can actually activate stem cells in the system. Now, this is a human product, and I've started, just this year, started to use these, but it has caused some miraculous results thus far. In particular, autoimmune cases, which is what you would expect, because your blood cells turn over 2.5 times a day. Typically, it's a rapid turnover, and so if you're affecting the ability
mitochondria
of cells, exactly, then that's going to be the first thing to turn around. So I'm just getting started with this, and I'm sure other veterinarians have tried these, but I haven't heard anything about it just yet. But there's an X39 stem cell activation patch that literally turns stem cells back on.
Wow. I would imagine that'd be really great for older dogs too.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the things I did for he was 15 when I started him on this black lab. His name is Buddy. And I put him in hyperbaric oxygen chamber twice a week. And he could see me through a little, like a portal, like a glass portal. And I just sat by him while he was in there for 45 minutes. And, we took him down a bunch of depths, whatever that number was. And they know that actually stimulates natural stem cell growth. And so you're basically anti-aging in a way. Yep. Really cool. Now, I wish I would have known about the patches back then, because I would have done that with it. I would have done everything I could. Try to hit it from multiple angles. And, when time is time is short. You want to do as much as you can. All right. So,
Exactly.
so why do you think this patch, just what's your theory? Why do you think it works for autoimmune dogs?
Well, every cell type has a different turnover rate in our bodies. And so it's the blood cells and the lining of the GI that turn over the most rapidly. So you're going to get the quickest impact in those systems. But it's doing marvelous things. The company doesn't want to make claims, as you might imagine, but it's having impacts in Alzheimer's and all kinds of really amazing things. And there's a couple of patches. Using two patches together actually really enhances the results from workouts. And it helps to regenerate cardiovascular systems that, a lot of people have had heart attacks and things like this. It completely restores that system and sets the age back. The clinical trials are indicating that 6 months of daily use, which is it's on 12 hours, off 12 hours, but in 6 months, you can reverse age for 8 years in humans.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yep.
All right. So in the dog, is it working the same way as the human, or do you have any theories that it's working in another way?
Well, this has not been tested in animals. However, the mammalian system is the same. The dogs and cats get different diseases than we do, of course. But it actually activates a copper peptide. And that copper peptide is the signaling system. And that's what I find really intriguing about sound and light frequencies, which essentially these patches are not transdermal. They don't put anything in the body. They're just reflecting infrared light signals. That's all it does.
Wow.
And that activates these copper peptides that then stimulate the stem cells. That's the mechanism of action.
Wow. There's so many, infrared saunas, like the best infrared saunas. I do wonder why we don't hear vets talking about giving that therapy to animals, giving them exposure, especially the dogs that are inside all day.
Because of the hair. The red light therapy works. It's fantastic. It's one of the greatest anti-aging modalities, if you will, available. But, that the therapeutic ranges are infrared, near infrared. Those are the main ranges. And you're just not going to have most animals unless you shave their hair off. They're just not going to get that signal. But this is a little bit different. A lot of veterinarians use cold laser. And you're actually stimulating a lot of the same cellular components, the signals, and so forth. But this is low-level light therapy, and it'll actually work through hair. So we take our dogs and we put them on the bottom of the collar, and it'll absorb infrared through the hair, and then reflect it back into the system.
So you just add this on the collar.
That's what we've been doing. Most dogs are just not going to leave a patch on, right? So
yeah. Oh, that's pretty smart. Can you review for us what your philosophy is on nutrition and like what kind of diets you recommend to your clients?
Well, increasingly, I'm encouraging people to make as much of their own pet's food as they can. And I think because of all the contamination in the system and the agricultural practices and the processing, I believe that we're going to probably have to start growing a lot of our own food or go with companies that, have the integrity, the commitment to purity and not processing. Really, it's back to creation. It's taking in plant and animal sources that are pure and uncontaminated. And, there's even misconceptions in agriculture. We all think about how the soils are depleted of minerals and so forth. That is not so completely true. It's really more about the microorganisms that are in soil that the plant interacts with. There's a signaling system between microorganisms and the roots of plants. And there's some synergy there where I believe those nutrients are still there, but we've just killed off all the bugs in the soil. Again, back to glyphosate and other pesticides and insecticides. It's coming at us from every direction. So I believe in whole food, and I believe that we all have to get in that organic mode, one way or the other.
Yeah, just become a necessary fact of life at this point to avoid the other stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't. You can't be a spectator anymore on the sidelines and just you can't expect to be healthy by default. You have to take an active role in not only your nutrition but your animal's nutrition. Yeah.
And we've been taught wrong. Look at on the human side, how long a lot of us bought into the low fat, no fat diets and things like that.
Yeah.
And, you have hypothyroidism and everything else. Endocrine problems, sperm counts, it's all out of whack. And
that's right.
Now you have doctors coming out preaching the carnivore lifestyle and all kinds of things. And I wouldn't necessarily advocate any one diet or another, but you can learn from what they're doing.
Yeah.
Really pay attention.
Well, yeah. I've done phases of the carnivore diet for sure.
Me too.
I don't think it's you don't do it all, you don't do it every single month, 12 months a year, but it certainly is good to reset, lean down. How do you think about fasting for animals? Do you believe in intermittent fasting or fasting for a day for a dog?
It sure doesn't hurt them.
Bigger dogs?
It sure doesn't hurt them. And it's so much better to maintain a lean body score, if you will, than to be carrying around those extra pounds. Because honestly, for every pound of fat, the way the world is, you're accumulating, actually concentrating all kinds of chemical contaminants in your system. It's almost inevitable.
That's right.
So
that's right. Yep. The fat is the repository. It's storing, it's compartmentalizing the chemicals. That's where the chemicals like to stay. And it's really hard to get them out once they stay in a fat store. Isn't that right?
There's one way to get rid of it. That's to lose weight.
Yeah. That's true. Okay. So are you pro raw food? Do you think it should be cooked? How do you like organs? Offal? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you push your clients or suggest to your clients any of those?
I haven't yet because I'm not an expert in that.
Okay.
And I really don't have the experience. I look to others on that, but I don't discourage it for sure.
Great. So now you're moving towards, you've got your 40 years in practice, which by the way, nothing against newer vets. You could find some genius vets, but I'm all about, if I was to move into a new place and I had to find a new vet, the first thing I do is look for somebody over 30 years. And I think it's something related to what you said, which is I've seen everything. And I want somebody who's just seen and dealt with basically everything and who's been faced with really troubled cases and has been forced. And this is in the integrative health holistic space only. Somebody who's seen so many things that they've, been able to test and, figure out what really works. And it becomes more it becomes more of an art form than a science, what they came out of vet school with compared to what they now use and do. I mean, your vet school didn't teach you these patches or any of these energy systems or mitochondria, right? Stem cells. Yeah.
No.
And
that was a long way.
Yeah. So yeah, after 40 years now, you're thinking about doing private consultations. So would you talk to me about how would somebody think about hiring a vet via Zoom or phone, and what kind of benefits can they get by working remotely from somebody? There's obviously some downsides. You're not touching the animal, putting your hands on and examining the animal, but what can some of the benefits and upsides be?
Well, I'll just say this, that if you're in any profession, if you're interested in being a problem solver and you pay attention, you're going to accrue experience. And, over time, you see all the disasters, you see the failures, you see the mistakes that people make, and things just get easier. I had a case just a couple of weeks ago from out of state, a situation where this dog had been to 2 veterinarians and they were referred to a specialty hospital, and they called me and said, so I asked them every question that I could think of that was relevant, and by the time I was done, and it only took 5 minutes because I'm very pointed with my questions. You learn that. But I knew the dog had encephalomyelitis. So called in the medications, and after the dog, about died a couple of times, apparently it's still running around and now better than ever. But, things get easier when you've seen a lot in any profession. So I don't know what to say. But experience is always the best teacher, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we've been really lucky. We've met just in the course of our show here that we've met some really young, aspiring, hungry for knowledge and curious. And so that is the other, I think, really key treatment or what's the word? Characteristic.
Excuse me just a second. Sorry to do this.
No problem. It's a busy vet. We'll pause and then okay, we're back. All right. So finding curious vets is another, even the younger ones that are coming out, just, finding somebody who's just got that relentless problem-solving ethos, to use your words. I mean, I think, isn't that why somebody goes into medicine? It's to solve problems. It's not to check a box on a clipboard and, just push drugs on the patient, right? I mean, drugs sometimes are great, but they're not always the answer.
Yeah, my prognosis on that is not great because the schools now are so controlled by big pharma, and the veterinary medicine has become such a business that honestly, I'm an anomaly as a private practitioner, a solo practitioner, private. So I really don't know what to say. There are people that go into medicine wanting to do things naturally and learn physiology and do things their way or find the truth in these things. But it's getting hard. It's getting very hard for sure.
Well, you mentioned anomaly. There's such a shortage of holistic. Well, first of all, veterinarians in general, and there's even by a multiple factor holistic veterinarian shortage. And I just think, I like to look at both my doctor and my pet's doctor as one of those old time doctors that like would hang their shingle outside with their name, and they do everything in their practice. They see different types of problems, and they can start to connect dots. Our veterinarian and our medical system, it's gotten so compartmentalized where you have to go to 5 different specialists. You get bounced around. Everybody's experienced this. You get bounced around from one specialist to another. This one specialist says, that's not my area, where I really can't help you. Try over here. You go over here. I mean, it's gotten insane. And then all these specialties, because they're quote specialties, they get to charge way more. And so I just think we're coming back, back to this idea of where our food's coming from, and cooking and gardening and, raising your food. I think we're also coming back to that in medicine, where we're looking towards that one doctor for a lot of things that has paid attention to, all sorts of different, issues, from digestive to immunity to, hormonal, et cetera. Right? Do you feel that way?
I do. Yeah. The pendulum swings back and forth from one extreme to the other. And I just really, I laugh, but I'm very discouraged oftentimes to hear stories of people trying to find solutions to their problems, and the same thing in the veterinary world.
Yeah.
And the specialists seem to hold all the credibility and the power. I think that's going to swing back, because it gets so frustrating for folks just trying to fix their problem. Can't somebody explain, oh no, my specialty is such and such, and mine is this and this. So go here, go there, go endlessly everywhere. And, I think for me, it just makes sense to travel down to the problem, whatever that is. And usually problems affect, all the different organ systems in one way or another. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, it's just like it seems like everything starts out really beautiful and pure. And, the way the medicine started out was holistic and all of that. And then eventually money starts getting in and starts figuring out, it's a pretty good opportunity here. We can game this the right way, and we can squeeze more out of it, whether it's from the schools, at the beginning level of schools down to the practice level. And then there's more control. There's more, you could squeeze profit out of it. But it doesn't mean it's better for the customer. And it's going to come back to bite them, I think. It just takes a long time for that to happen. So I'm in agreement with you on that. It's going to come back to bite them. So to that end, you're interested in getting to help animals outside of Mammoth Lakes. So you're going to be starting to do consults via what? Zoom, phone?
Probably some sort of a telemedicine. I haven't chosen the exact mechanism yet, but yes, I'm going to be doing consulting, and usually we can get to the bottom of problems much more quickly and efficiently that way. But, usually you do rely on the local practitioner to have blood work and x-rays in a lot of instances. And, but I look forward to that. I think my skills can be utilized a lot better by being online and helping folks out that way. For sure.
Yeah. What I personally believe that, I have phone consults with my doctor. I see him once a year and twice a year sometimes, but mostly it's over the phone or via text. He's a genius. That's enough for us to see each other. And it's for wellness. But it's his problem solving. It's his brain. That's the thing that I'm interested in solving. Hey, I'm curious about this question. Help me solve around it. Help me get my arms around it. I'm not qualified to think of it this way. And that's what I do also with my dog's care. I'm I'm working with my vet intellectually to help me think around this problem. So I think it's so genius that that vets are starting to be more open to these Zoom and phone consults, because I honestly think we have a problem solving problem. And most pet owners have this, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 10 for the emotion and the care of their animals. And they're at a 3 of knowing what to ask. They don't know what they don't know. They walk into a vet's office and they're completely, they surrender themselves to a vet who may not be properly thinking through their problem. So having somebody like you that helps them think through and gives them instructions to walk into a vet's office in their town and say, what I think I'd like to do is this test, this test, this test. Can you help me out? And then get that ordered. So I think that's really, I think that might even be the future of most vets don't want to practice like into their 90s. They just don't want to do that. But I think we might be able to get them on phone consults and Zoom consults and being, contributing and giving all this wealth of knowledge that they've built up. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the brilliant vets stay on in practice in some other form, from the comfort of their home.
Ditto. Yeah, that's the whole basis for specialization. How many heart surgeries do you do a year? Well, you don't want to go to somebody who does just a couple. So the specialization in theory is fantastic.
Some specialization is great. Yep.
Yeah, but it's gotten to the point where, you can't find a general practitioner to, just go through sorting through your situation. I would add here that I know you know Dr. Dodds, who I worked with for a time years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought she was pretty crazy at the time. But
when you were conventional.
About 25 years ago,
Yeah.
I changed all my vaccine protocols. And so in our practice, we have 0 hypothyroidism. There's not one dog that is hypothyroid. Wow. And that is, the leading endocrine disease in dogs in this country. So a testament to Dr. Dodds.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying both those things, because that goes back to what we just talked about earlier at the beginning, which was if you are not exposed to holistic, the miracles that happen for your dogs, all you have to do is see one. I was a convert when I switched to raw food. I mean, what I saw happen, and that was a recommendation from Dr. Marty Goldstein and Dr. Bob Goldstein. When I saw that, I said, you know what? You guys got me. I'm in your hands. You point me in a direction and I'm there. I will comply and make sure that I am participating in this genius. And I have seen nothing but miracles in my dogs. And all my blood tests in my dogs, I tell everybody, they're always, boom, spot on. They're never like, oh boy, your thyroid's off. The dog's, this is off, that is off. It's just, that's all that we want. It's really, I'm not asking for a lot. I'm just asking for a healthy dog. And it turns out you need to find these really great holistic vets to get it.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, most of the time. Yeah. But when you don't know about holistic vets or integrative, whatever the term, and you're exposed to them for the first consult, or you read a book and you're like, the person's thinking on another plane. It's just a different way of thinking, and it's a different way of problem solving. So you have to appreciate it. And I'm so sad that, a lot of times what happens is people, they go through 2, 3, 4, 5 vets before they get to the holistic vet, especially in really extreme, horrible situations like cancers. And so, the poor holistic vet now has to deal with a stage 4 cancer when they could have dealt with stage 1 or pre-cancer, stage 0. just a shame. Eventually people come around when they're forced, and it's just, it's tough.
We learn our lessons hard, a lot of us humans.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we really do. Well, Dr. T, I really appreciate you, and I really thank you for the time you spent with us today. And I want to take people back to your website. So, again, you're in Mammoth Lakes, and your website is Alpen with ALPENVET, Alpen Vet, and reach him there if you're interested in a phone consult. And we didn't get a lot of time to talk about your foundation that you're working on. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that? It's called the Better Medicine Naturally Foundation.
Yeah, I'm going to, after 40 years, go into consulting online, and that's going to be bettermedicinenaturally.com. And so we'll do telemedicine and consults, and basically after 40 years of seeing how not to do it, hopefully I can help a lot of people be preemptive, proactive, and solve problems the easy way. And you're absolutely correct. It's really disheartening to see end stage cancers and dogs that can't walk and so on. All kinds of degenerative conditions that really, if you can just be proactive when things begin to show up and take corrective action, if you can find somebody that knows how to do that, that's magic.
Yeah.
One example, I'll just give you one more example. Collapsing trachea. I had this theory about the tracheomalacia that small breed dogs get, and it's so devastating. We had a Yorkshire Terrier 20 years ago, and he developed collapsing trachea. It was around 2008, 2009 when he developed that. And my theory was that a certain kind of cartilage would inhibit the softening of those cartilage rings. Well, I had some basis why I thought that. So I began to, test my theory on my own dog. And I think he was 8 years at that time. And the condition went away. He lived to 17 and a half. So good supplementation and corrective action really works. So I'll leave it at that.
Wow. Well, that's great. That's a great story. Well, everybody wants the dogs they love to live to 17. Are you kidding? We'll take that any day of the week. I mean, what's that worth? You can't even put a dollar amount on it. Well, everybody, I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you for joining us, Dr. T. And so again, alpenvet.com is how you can reach Dr. T. And we'll hope to have you on again soon. We'll talk more about digestive and stem cells and hopefully about your experience with your foundation.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.